We're about to come together.
What was that song? That was a Beatles song. Come together. All right. So Aaron is doing an important presentation. It was very kind of him to kind of give up his space with David, and we rearranged things. So thank you for being a team player and for your help. It was kind of you. So Aaron, he's speaking today, and Natan Sharansky is coming after. And does everybody know who Sharansky is, by the way? Does anybody not know who he is? Don't be ashamed.
I think some people don't know.
Okay, so Natan Sharansky, I'll be very brief because I don't want to give a long introduction when he comes on, so we can go through the program. But Natan was a leader of the Refusnik movement. It was a group of Jewish people in the former Soviet Union who wanted to, A, live as Jewish people, because in the Soviet Union religion was illegal, and have the right to go to Israel. And anybody who applied to go to Israel or practice their religion would be kicked out of their job. In the Soviet Union, if you weren't working and you were unemployed, you were considered a parasite on the economy. So many of the Jewish people were imprisoned, were living underground. There was a whole terrible situation. And Natan was one of the leaders of the Refusnik movement and the Helsinki group, which is a human rights movement in the former Soviet Union. Natan was imprisoned. He was in solitary confinement for many years. He was a long hunger strike, living in horrible conditions. He was in prison for 8 years. And then, with the fall of the Soviet Union, was freed, and he moved to Israel. And he's like the Nelson Mandela of the Jewish world, of the former Soviet Union world. He's really a human rights hero. When he got to Israel, it was really like miraculous that the Jews of the former Soviet Union and a few people of that origin around were able to finally leave and be free as Jews and move either to the West or to Israel. And then Natan served in the Israeli government for many years in different key cabinet positions. And then he was the head of the Jewish Agency, which is sort of a para-public organization and represents Israel's interface with the diaspora world Jewry, head of the Jewish agencies. And now he's gone to a much higher level, maybe the most important position ever. He's the chairman of ISGAP. I'm kidding. So he's an amazing person, really, a human rights activist, very humble, very smart. He actually beat Kasparov in chess at one point, so he's like a world-class chess player. A very nice man. So he'll be addressing us as the chair of ISGAP after Aaron. Okay, so that's the background, because I don't want to go into a whole introduction when he's on the phone. He gets embarrassed when I start introducing him. That's how humble he is. But this guy likes long introductions. So I'm kidding. All right. So Aaron is going to speak about, his talk is an examination of the anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism woven into the fabric of the new Christian nationalism. And I just want to go to your...
I'm in the back, I think. You don't have to.
I'll read parts of it very quickly.
Keep going.
There we go. It's a short one. Humble man. Aaron is an ISGAP Research Fellow, which we're very honored that he is, and he's the president of the Israel Team Advocates International, a non-profit organization that advocates for Jewish existence. Israel Team works on Christian college campuses in the United States in a time of growing anti-Semitism in the Christian Academy. Aaron is the author of 4 books and the editor of the Causality of Contempt, The Alarming Rise of Anti-Semitism and What Can Be Done to Stop It. Aaron writes regularly for the Times of Israel and Allgemeiner, the Jerusalem Post, and Israel 365 News, and is really also on an incredible, interesting personal journey with all this stuff. So Aaron, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is not a talk about Christian nationalism. If you want that talk, you can go to the ISGAP website. Diane Martin and I taught a class this winter for ISGAP on the history of Christian nationalism. I think my presentation from last summer is on ISGAP's website as well. So this is a very specific talk on Christian nationalism. which is under the banner of Christian anti-Semitism. So quickly, I'll just, what am I hitting here, Elchid? I wish the shift button or up and down? Arrow up?
Arrow to the right.
There we go. Okay, so this is my grandmother, Rose Krupnik. That was her maiden name. And my grandmother raised me. My father was killed by a drunk driver when I was 4. So my grandmother raised me on Russian kreplach and Jewish humor. And my grandmother, when she was about 25 years old, her parents were Orthodox Jews, and she converted to Christianity. And so, as a result, her mother and father said, "We love you, but we can never speak to you again." And so they never did speak to her again her entire life. When she was dying, I remember the day I was a young teenager, and my grandmother's sister came up from LA. We lived in Northern California. It was a red Cadillac. Her husband was a Hollywood producer, and she got out of the car with one of those long LA cigarettes with red high heel shoes. And she came in to pay her last respects to her sister. These are my grandmother's 4 first children. She had 11 children, and these are the first 4. Nathan on the left, Sarah, Miriam, and in the suit, the dark suit, that's my father, Zev, who died when he was 31 years of age. So my great-grandmother is here on the right. That's her daughter, Paulina, son-in-law, and granddaughter. And so my great-grandmother, she never would see me because of the issue of my grandmother's conversion. So I grew up feeling like the other, right? And so my great-grandmother was alive till I was probably 18, 19 years of age. She was just a few hours south, but she just didn't want to connect with 28 grandchildren. And I never understood that. I didn't know why I was the other. I didn't understand Christian anti-Semitism. I didn't understand the roots of it. And so my great-grandmother, she escaped. She and her husband, Jacob, he passed away before this picture was taken, in 1899 to escape the suppression of Russian Jews. When they came to America in 1903, there was a pogrom, and it was called the Easter pogrom. And the New York Times writes about it as the Kishinev pogrom. There was a well laid out plan for the general massacre of Jews the day following the Orthodox Easter. The mob was led by priests, and the general cry, "Kill the Jews," was taken up all over the city. Jews were slaughtered like sheep. And so my uncle, Nathan, that was in that picture, in his middle age, he connected with my great-grandmother, the first and probably only. And she told him the story that in 1903, when that Kishinev pogrom happened, when Christian priests and a mob of Christians murdered Jews, it was my great-grandmother's family that they were all murdered in that mob. So you can imagine, and I didn't understand this, but you can imagine the angst that they would have had with my grandmother converting to Christianity. They probably wished that she would have converted to Buddhism or something, or atheism, but never Christianity. So there was never any connection. So there was a resentment, a rejection that was in my own soul. And this is my family, my grandmother's brother, great-grandmother's brother, my grandmother's uncle, Shlomo, and Sima, Boxerman, and their family. The girl in the polka dotted dress in the left, she witnessed the murder. And so the Nazi Eisengruppen came in, and they dragged my grandmother's family out of their home, and the soldiers all had crosses on their belts with the words, Gut mein uns, God is with us. And so again, my family is a family that was ripped apart by Christian nationalism and Christian anti-Semitism. So they were all shot point blank in Trostinets, Belarusia. The girl in the polka dotted dress escaped, and she later on reported to Yad Vashem the day they were murdered, how they were murdered, and the rest. So I grew up with this sort of rejection by my Jewish family. I went into the ministry, went to seminary, became a pastor. And so for probably 20 years, I was teaching and preaching replacement theology. That wherever you see the word Zion in the Bible, that is really speaking about the church. The church has replaced Israel. I even went to conferences on replacement theology. And this is a whole long story. I won't take time to tell it, but in 2002, sitting in my office, I'm a pastor. I had 120 employees. And I'm sitting in my office probably writing a budget of something. And I have an epiphany. I just start weeping. And I said, my grandmother's dying prayer is that I'd go to Israel and reconcile with her family. There was a family member that had escaped, a brother that had left before the Nazis came in. He was living in Israel, had 4 children. And go and find my family. I totally rejected it, didn't want anything to do with my Jewish identity. And so that just began a journey, and I have this epiphany: go to Israel, find your family. The next day I get a letter from the Israeli government inviting me on an all-expense-paid trip to Israel. It was already in the mail when I had this, whatever you want to call it, epiphany. And a month later I'm on a flight to Israel where I met my family, and we reconciled, and it was back and forth since. I have 100 family members in the state of Israel. Okay, so today we're going to look at an examination of the anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism woven into the fabric of contemporary Christian nationalism in the United States of America. You've all heard the phrase, the canary in the coal mine. And so I want to talk today about the canary in the coal mine. And if you don't know the story, canaries are ultra-sensitive to methane gas. So the early coal miners would bring them into the mines because if the canary stopped singing, the coal miners knew this is an emergency. The alarm has sounded, and we've got to leave the mine to save our lives. The coal miners really loved their canaries, and so they actually built a canary resuscitator. And in the British Museum, there's an article by the curator who says his favorite artifact out of 200,000 artifacts in the museum is the canary resuscitator. And so the little hatch opens up so the canary can get air, but if the canary passes out, they close the hatch and they turn on the oxygen and the canary is revived. So canary in the coal mine simply means, if anti-Semitism is spreading, it's an alarm that should be sounded. So the premise, Christian nationalism is rapidly expanding the U.S., and sewn into the fabric of this movement is viral anti-Semitism. The problem, significantly few Christian leaders are addressing this growing trend. The canary has stopped singing, but Christians are not paying attention for the most part. The definition, and lots of people have asked me this week, what is Christian nationalism? This is by Russell Moore, who's the editor of Christianity Today. Christian nationalism refers to the use of Christian words, symbols, or rituals to shore up an ethnic or national identity and distinguish their group from those they define as outsiders. And this is my own definition that's in the Times of Israel article I wrote. The growing Christian nationalist movement in the U.S. seeks to convert America into a Christian nation by changing laws and taking over state and federal government institutions. The rhetoric of the movement is quickly mutating, becoming more violent, due to the fact that it is reactionary and fear-based. Christian nationalists have always needed a nefarious character, an enemy representing evil they can blame for the problems of their time. Historically, the enemies of choice for Christian nationalists have been Jews. When Christian nationalists talk about globalists, the media, Hollywood's immorality, and the world's banking system, all enemies of Christian nationalists, they are often referring to Jews. Christian nationalism is a religious cult. It is unchristian, but employs Christian concepts and discourse to deceive its followers. Those who serve up the Kool-Aid to the masses have sold out their Christian conscience to the seduction of power and position. At its core, Christian nationalism is a political ideology of protest. It's a revolt, some would say an insurrection, against anyone or any institution opposed to its fundamental belief that America's national destiny must be Christian, and it is a Christian's duty to persuade the government by force of fiat if necessary to return to its Christian heritage. But Christianity was never meant to be a political ideology. On the contrary, Christianity finds its purpose not in protest politics or power, but through loving justice, showing mercy especially to the poor. And so, all of us here, we've talked about a story this week. Caroline told me this week about her family story. And the reason why she's fighting anti-Semitism is to protect her daughters. And so for me, as I shared my story up front, why I'm doing what I'm doing is because I want to, somehow I can reach back in time and into Trostenets, Belarusa, and if I could somehow save my family from Christian nationalists that brutally murdered them, I would give my life for that, to protect them. So that's why I do what I do. That's my story. So the stats, Christian nationalists by the numbers, and this is from the Brookings Institute that did this survey in just a couple months ago in 2023, and I'll just go through it. I won't take time to really dive into this, but all this will be on the WhatsApp group chat, and El Shaddai will send all these out. So Christian nationalists by the numbers, U.S. government should declare America a Christian nation. We're looking at 27%. U.S. law should be based on Christian values. We're looking at 40%. If the U.S. moves away from our Christian foundation, we will not have a country anymore, 38%. Being Christian is an important part of being truly an American, 30%. And then God has called Christians to exercise dominion over all areas of American society, 20%. So you're talking about a nation with 350 million people, and just run the numbers on that. 20% of 350 million people, 30% of 350 million people. We're talking millions and millions of Christians that believe in the Christian nationalist ideology. Some subgroups that you can look at later. So basically, here's another one. Jewish people stick closer together than other Americans. 58% of Christian America. Jewish people are more loyal to Israel than America, 44%. American Christians love Israel more than most American Jews do, 40%, and on down the line. So basically, the basic number is about 30 to 35% of Americans adhere to or are sympathetic towards the ideology of America becoming a completely Christian nation. This was at the Capitol insurrection, January 6th. If you would see the pictures, there's crosses, there are people carrying Bibles, and this lady puts Jesus in a MAGA hat. This is by an artist. He's a Christian nationalist artist. His name is McNutt. And you can look up his, you can look up his, he gives interpretations to his Christian nationalist painting.
He's really a Jewish guy, but he changed his name.
Yeah.
Okay,
So here's Jesus holding the Declaration of Independence. And if you look in the right of the picture, my right of the picture, this right, he gives the interpretation. If you can see real clearly above the gentleman, he represents Hollywood. Behind him is Satan whispering in his ear.
Where's that?
The dark complected, right here. It's fuzzy. He did it on purpose. He's whispering into Hollywood's ear. And again, Christian nationalists, it's the Jews who represent Hollywood. Down in the far right corner, that's a banking Wall Street guy, again, dark-complected, Jewish, counting his money. The lady with the microphone, that represents the media. So those are the enemies of Christian nationalism. Okay, the challenge, communicating the dangers of contemporary Christian nationalism to Christians who are merging their religious and political ideologies with anti-Semitism and are indifferent, in denial, sympathizers, or supporters of Christian nationalism. Mark Twain said, it's much easier to fool a person than to convince them they have been fooled. And so we're dealing with a populace of people that are being fooled by an ideology that is completely unchristian. Alex de Tocqueville, no man can struggle with advantage against the spirit of his age and country, and however powerful a man may be, it's hard for him to make his contemporaries share feelings and ideas which run counter to the general run of their hopes and desires. So it's very difficult, it's an uphill climb to convince people that are persuaded by Christian nationalism that they're wrong. And then by one of the best historians on the planet, Agent K, humans for the most part don't have a clue. They don't want one or need one either. They're happy. They think they have a good bead on things. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew humans were alone on this planet. He's trying to convince the character of Will Smith that there are aliens in America. Imagine what we'll know tomorrow. And so people really are indifferent. They don't want to know. They don't want to discover. So that's the challenge. 4 areas of examination in this presentation, give you a brief historical context, and then we're going to look at anti-Semitism and contemporary Christian nationalism, Franklin Littell's criteria of a potentially genocidal movement, and why is contemporary Christian nationalism developing an anti-Semitic polemic, and what can be done to change the narrative. Brief historical context, everything has to be rooted in history. And so there's our last talk last summer was on the history of Christian anti-Semitism, but again, this is particular. This is specifically talking about the root of Christian nationalism. And it begins with Justin Martyr. I think Joel and others had a slide of Justin Martyr. The true spiritual Israel and descendants of Judah, Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham are we who have been led to God through this crucified Christ. We who have been quarried out from the bowels of Christ are the true Israelite race. They, God's promises to Israel, are not yours but ours. We too would observe your circumcision of the flesh, your Sabbath days, and in a word, all your festivals, if we were not aware of the reason they were imposed upon you because of your hardness of heart. Okay, so what happened is, fast forward from Justin Martyr, the 325 AD, which is the Council of Nicaea, that's where Christian nationalism, in my view, began. That's where the connection between church and state happened at the Council of Nicaea. And most Christians would say it was a wonderful conference. That's where we declared, who Christ was theologically, but mixed into that conference was deep anti-Judaism and deep anti-Semitism. It's where Christianity basically started its own gig and broke away from its Jewish inception. And truly, in the first place, it seemed to everyone a most unworthy thing that we should follow the custom of the Jews in the celebration of this holiest solemnity, Passover, who polluted wretches, having stained their hands with a nefarious crime, deicide, by the way, are justly blinded in their minds. It is fit, therefore, that rejecting the practice of this people, we should perpetuate to all future ages the celebration of the rite in a more legitimate order and have nothing in common with this hostile rabble of Jews. So Constantine, of course, emperor, he built coalition with the church. And a Jewish historian named Jules Isaac, all the way back in 1961, said, after very deep historical research, I say and maintain that the fate of the Jewish people did not take on a truly inhuman character until the 4th century with the coming of the Christian Empire. So whenever the empire attaches to Christianity, it always leads to tyranny, authoritarianism, and ultimately genocide. And you can trace that through history. And so heading back into a Christian nationalist state in America always spells danger for Jews. Emperor Justinian, a few hundred years later in 535, the greatest gifts God gives to men are the church hierarchy, priesthood for the service of men, and the empire for the order of human affairs. So the connection had been made. Fast forward to Nazi Germany, where the church, for the most part, there was a small confessing church that would not submit to the Nazis. It was very small. The majority of evangelical churches across Germany and Catholic churches embraced Nazi ideology, often begging the Nazis to allow them to hang swastikas from their pulpits. Martin Sass, bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Thuringia, Germany, did you know this? That Kristallnacht was on Luther's birthday. On November 10th, 1938, on Luther's birthday, Kristallnacht, the synagogues are burning in Germany. Luther was the greatest anti-Semite of his time, the warner of his people against the Jews. He was a Lutheran bishop. And then, I won't take the time to read this, but you can read it later. Father Wilhelm Schmidt says the same thing. It's the duty of every German Aryan and German Christian to fight against the Jews and destroy them, because the Bolshevik Jews are coming into Germany and trying to invade our Christian nation. It's our duty to defend ourselves against the Jew. Two good books in the subject. Richard Steigman Gall's book, The Holy Reich, just shows how Christian nationalism was at the core of the Holocaust. And then another by Susanna Heschel. I did not know that she said that Israel is an apartheid state, but this book is an outstanding book. I've interviewed Dr. Heschel in my radio program. It's a incredible history on an organization that lasted through the entire Holocaust, the Institute for the Eradication of Jewish Influence on German Church Life. And it was supported by most evangelical churches in Germany. A new book that came out about 2 years ago, published by Harvard Press, by Charles Gallagher. Have you seen this book? It's called The Nazis of Copley Square, The Forgotten Story of the Christian Front. I had no idea. I contacted Charles. I'm going to do a series of interviews with him. He's a Catholic priest and a professor of history at Boston College. And this was a group of Christian nationalists. They were called the Fronters. They armed themselves with grenades, machine guns, weapons, and they were planning an insurrection against the United States government. This is back in the 30s. Fronters believed firmly in deicide, the idea that Jews had killed Christ, and their leaders moved them from this age-old position towards a distinctly modern and violent blend of anti-Semitism and anti-communism. And so what their worry was that Lenin Bolshevism was going to come into America. And so the last line there says, Jews had killed the earthly body of Christ before. Now, under the guise of Bolshevism, Jews were persisting in that most horrifying sin by killing Christ's mystical body as well. And if you look at Christian nationalism, that thought is woven from Nazi Germany all the way up to today, that the Jews are kill the earthly body of Christ, deicide. Now they're trying to destroy Christianity in America. Okay, if you guys know this one, I won't play it, but this is Father Coughlin.
That among other things in the National Union for Social Justice, we are Christian insofar as we believe in Christ's principle of love your neighbor as yourself, and with that principle, I challenge every Jew in this nation to tell me that he does not believe in it.
This is the United States of America. Father Coughlin had a radio program in the 1930s, all the way up to probably 39, 40, called The Hour of Power. He had 30 million weekly listeners. He was supported by the Ford Foundation. He was connected to the German Bund. He was connected to the Nazis of Copley Square, the Christian Front. So think about that. America at that time was about 120 million people. 30 million people were Christian nationalists. This is the Nazi rally. Madison Square Garden. Yeah. These are Christians. Again, connected to the Christian Front in Boston. This is the German Bund in New York. God and Country. It's 1939 Madison Square Garden.
Ladies and gentlemen, I demand that our government shall be returned to the American people who founded it. If you ask what we are actively fighting for under our term. First, a social just white Gentile who ruled the United States. Second, Gentile controlled labor union, free from Jewish Moscow directed.
Free from Jewish Moscow control.
Who was that guy?
He was the leader of the German Bund. God Bless America, they sang at the events. Okay. All right, anti-Semitism and contemporary Christian nationalism, and we're going to look real quickly at Franklin Littell's criteria of a potentially genocidal movement. You can look up his papers at Temple University, and this is a paper he wrote for Yad Vashem back in 2000. And Franklin Littell, in the introduction to this paper, when we come to the question of political responsibility in a world as explosive as ours, we must begin to make some distinctions. To do this, I would suggest testing the overt behavior of political movements according to the following 15 criteria. If out of 15, 10, or 11 clearly apply to some current movement, it's time for the alarm bells to start sounding. So if you can find 10 out of his 15 criteria of a potentially genocidal movement, the canary has stopped singing. So if you want to read a great book, it's by Dr. Patterson from ISGAP, Legacy of an Impassioned Plea, Franklin Littell's Crucifixion of the Jews. Okay, so here's I found 10. He said if you can find 10, you need to sound the alarm. So I found 10. The movement prints, distributes, and uses anti-Semitic material for the recruitment of members. Do we find that today in contemporary Christian nationalism? This is an organization called Reawaken America. They're attracting 7,000 to 10,000 people to their events. If you look at the poster, the top, they're the supposedly righteous against the unrighteous. At the top, there's a Holy Bible. At the bottom, there's a serpent. This has the protocols of the Elders of Zion written all over it. The phrase reset, the concept comes from the protocols, that the Jews are going to basically close down civilization and reform it based on their humanistic ideals. So the whole idea of we're worried that the country's going to be reset. On the picture at the bottom, that's Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum. The next is a Jewish man, Soros, Bill Gates. The third is a Jewish man, a Jewish intellectual from Hebrew University. His name is Yuval Noah Harari. You've probably heard of him. President Barack Obama, and then another Jewish man, Zuckerberg. So out of the 6, 3 of the enemies that Christian nationalism is against are Jews. There's an article on Rolling Stones about Reawaken America. It's being covered by the ADL. A lot of Jewish organizations are very concerned. Very few Christians.
7 minutes.
Yeah, I got it. 7. Okay. Who's who in evangelicalism? They're speaking at these events. Alex Jones from InfoWars, he's the keynote. This is next weekend, by the way, in Las Vegas. They'll have about 10,000 people there. Christian publishers, people I've known over the years, have all come into this Christian nationalist movement. And then Roseanne Barr, who said a few weeks ago, she hoped that 6 million Jews would go to the gas chambers again.
She's Jewish.
She's Jewish. And she said, I'm saying it as humor, but the ADL came out and said, it's terrible humor.
So she's speaking there?
She's speaking there. She's the keynote speaker. No, I think she still thinks of herself as having Jewish roots. Okay, the Reawaken comes straight from Nazi Germany. This was the Nazi banner. Awaken, Deutschland awake was their motto. True News, Rick Wiles.
Who can't you criticize in America?
The Jewish lobby.
Yes, on both sides.
Right.
That tells you who controls the country.
One more.
The way the Jews work They are deceivers. They plot, they lie, they do whatever they have to do to accomplish their political agenda. This impeach Trump movement is a Jew coup. And the American people better wake up to it really fast, because this thing is moving now towards a vote in the House and then a trial in the Senate. We could have a trial before Christmas. This country could be in civil war at Christmas time. That's right. Members of the U.S. military are going to have to take a stand, just like they did in the 1860s with the Civil War. They're going to have to decide, are you fighting for the North or the South? Members of the government are going to have to take a side. Instead of North, South, it's going to be left or right. People are going to be forced, possibly by this Christmas, to take a stand because of this Jew coup in the United States. We have weeks to stop it. That's why I'm speaking out. That's why I'm putting everything on the line. Say, this is a coup led by Jews to overthrow the constitutionally elected president of the United States. And it's beyond removing Donald Trump. It's removing you and me. That's what's at the heart of it. That's right. You have been taken over by a Jewish cabal, a Bolshevik revolution, and I'm going to tell you, the Church of Jesus Christ, you're next. Get it through your head. They're coming for you. There will be a purge. That's the next thing that happens when Jews take over a country. They kill millions of Christians.
Okay, you've seen enough of that.
When was that?
This is one of the speakers at Reawaken America. He's a keynote speaker.
I think I prefer the apartheid monarchy.
I know. Seriously. At least it's subtle.
If the Jewish people are really God's people, then how come all these centuries they've had so much problems and there's been a curse upon them, and Hitler tried to kill 6 million of them, and how come it took till 1948 to get back into their homeland? And why is there right now, by the way, right now, the threat of civil war this month in Israel?
This was 2 months ago, this sermon.
Why are they having so much trouble if they say they really are the people of God? I'll tell you why. Because the religious people declared a curse over themselves generationally. They said, His blood be on us and on our children's children. And God said, okay, if that's what you want, bucko, there you go.
What? I didn't even follow.
And the people of God have been in persecution, punishment, and torment because they spoke that curse over themselves.
Deicide.
His blood be on us.
Jews accepted the curse.
Greg Locke. He's a keynote speaker at Reawaken America. All right, the same action the group uses anti-Semitic material to recruit members is directed against any other ethnic, religious, or cultural community, using targeting and intimidation as a weapon in the quest for political power. You've heard of Westboro Baptist Church. They hate Jews and everybody else. ADL is following them. The same action movement makes anti-Semitic appeals through the media or an evangelistic meeting. It's directed against any other ethnic, religious, or cultural community, using targeting, intimidation as a weapon for quest for political power.
About the United States of America.
It's Michael Flynn,
About the United States of America, because when
keynote
Malcolm
speaker
in
at
the
Reawaken.
Bible, he wasn't talking about the physical ground that he was on. He was talking about something in the distance. So if we are going to have one nation under God, which we must, we have to have one religion, one nation under God, and one religion under.
Okay,
Just to
so
interrupt,
Yeah.
yesterday I received
Right.
he blamed the Holocaust on the Jews
right, said that they're
for killing Christ.
yeah. This is Reawaken America conference about a year ago. Pardon?
Where does it take place?
It takes place in Las Vegas the 25th and the 26th of this month, which is next weekend.
But it's a national tour.
Why Las
It's a national tour.
Yeah, why?
Of all places.
Okay, this is, so they strike out against, not just Jews, they strike out against any enemy.
Let's go who?
Let's go Brandon.
Who's Brandon?
Usually first the Bible.
Okay, you know that Let's Go Brandon is against the President of the United States. It means F Joe Biden. So at a Christian nationalist event, they're shouting F the President of the United States.
It's just coded. It's supposed to be euphemistic.
It's people that go into high school graduation, it had Trump on it and a magnet, and I was like, is that their son's name? I was like,
Oh, really?
I was like, they had a t-shirt.
Okay. Members cultivate violence towards opponents by publishing slanderous charges. Clay Clark, who is the leader of Reawaken America, declares that Yuval Noah Harari is the Antichrist. This is Clay Clark's website. He has a podcast. This is his title of this particular episode of his podcast. Who is steering the Great Reset narrative? Who's at the helm steering this? It's a Jew, Yuval Noah Harari, who he says is the Antichrist. These are the comments after his podcast was over.
Great Reset, someone asked.
Huh?
What is the Great Reset, somebody asked?
The Great Reset is the Jews are going to reset the culture of the United States of America. So we're fighting the Great Reset. Yeah.
It's a Davos-led international
Right.
conspiracy to reset our
Right,
our
but they
economy.
picked up on that, and they're using it against the Jews. Okay, these are some of the quotes from Christians who listen to the podcast. Nazi, I won't say the word, anti-God devils, minions, this is the Rothschilds, royal bankers, war to protect the failed bank Ponzi scheme. A simple rope and a tree would end this worldwide problem. Obviously, the justice system of the world doesn't work. We need a specialist to go around and take these people out and their families, as it's the only way that we can stop it. So these are Christians talking about Noah Harari, saying he needs to be beheaded. The rest are talking about beheading and murder. This is Scott McKay, keynote speaker, Reawaken America. He's known as the Patriot Street Fighter. And he says, Hitler was attempting to break free of the Rothschilds' corrupt money magic fiat system and develop a banking system for the people of the free world. Hitler was fighting the same people we're trying to take down. These people are so elusive and slippery and cunning that we ended up having World War II. 9/11 was a terror attack orchestrated by the same group of people that has done a very good job at hiding under the religion of Judaism. This is another one, Charlie Ward, keynote speaker at Reawaken America. He's a Holocaust denier. By the way, both of his sons are keynote speakers at this event.
But they're Jews.
That's the son-in-law. The movement pursues the politics of polarization, destroying the middle ground of conciliation and compromise. This is Robert Jeffries, who gave the prayer at the opening of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, and then went back to his church and said, God sends good people to hell. Not only do religions like Judaism lead people away from God, but they also lead people to an eternity of separation from God and hell. Hell is not only going to be populated by murderers, hell is going to be filled with good religious people, Jews, who have rejected the truth of Christ. So he loves Israel. He does not like Jews. Am I okay?
You're good.
Okay.
I'm okay.
The group of movement deliberately drives a wedge between the generations, alienating young people from their heritage, a very characteristic part of the policy of the Nazi Party. Again, these are by Franklin Littell, his criteria. This is from Andrew Torba, founder of the CEO of Gab.com, who's just written a Christian nationalist manifesto calling for the total takeover of the United States government and training our children outside of, taking them out of the American system, education, financial, everything. They're going to convert into a Christian nationalist country. Leaders of the movement elaborate a quasi-religious structure of authority and sanction with political hymns, shrines, martyrs, and liturgies. Who would you think would be the martyr of the Christian nationalists? Before and after Donald Trump, historic indictment and arraignment, countless MAGA Republicans, provocateurs, have been noting the Holy Week timing and comparing Trump to Jesus. Just as Christ was crucified and then rose again on the third day, so too will Donald Trump, tweeted one right-wing lawyer known for representing January 6 insurrectionists. Okay, the book to the right is a new book that just came out, President Donald Trump, the Son of Man, the Christ. There's Trump.
I don't think I can take that picture.
Trump, but this is not funny. I mean, these people actually believe, he's a martyr. He is their martyr. Okay. Archaic tribal, clannish, and religious symbols are worn by members. And of course, at every one of these events, the t-shirts, the baseball hats, Q is for QAnon, which is deeply embedded into Christian nationalism. The movement practiced deception and confusion of public opinion by launching one-issue fronts. The one-issue front for today's Christian nationalism is the Great Replacement Theory. You've heard of Nick Fuentes. He had dinner with Trump a few months ago. If Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a Jewish woman, didn't die last year so that Amy Coney Barrett, a Catholic woman, could be appointed to the bench, we would still have Roe versus Wade. And added, now you tell me that this is a Judeo-Christian country. You tell me that it doesn't matter that we have a lot of Jewish people in government. We need a government of Christians. Jewish people can be here, but they can't make our laws.
Catholic reactionary. I believe that organized Jewry is extremely influential in the United States and pushes America towards an open society, liberalism, internationalism for their own benefit.
Okay. Tell me when I'm done.
You're done?
Okay.
All
No, I'm
right.
not done, but tell me.
Well, do a little Q&A until Natan comes?
Yeah.
Or you want to?
I'll just one more point.
Okay.
Why is contemporary Christian nationalism developing an anti-Semitic polemic? Theological misinformation, deicide, and which is, the theory that the Jews killed Christ, and replacement theology, supersessionism, triumphalism, that teaches that the church has triumphed over the Jew, churches superseded Judaism. So theological misinformation, and if I have time after Mr. Sharansky, I can explain the root of deicide. It's a mistranslation of the word Jews in the New Testament. Why is contemporary Christian nationalism developing an anti-Semitic polemic? Is he on? Okay.
All right. So we'll come back.
Oh, yeah,
next
sure.
time?
No
Okay.
problem.
All right. Cool. Thank you, Aaron. Now we can go and eat. No. Okay. Natan's here. Shalom, Natan.
Trying to get you to see the group.
Okay. So, but maybe I can point this. I can welcome
Yeah,
you.
sure.
Shalom, Natan. Hi.
Shalom, Charles.
How are you? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So I told the group about you already. Nasima told me you don't like personal introductions, so we gave a long introduction about what you've been doing, and that you're the chair of ISGAP, so thank you for being here. And unfortunately, we're in Oxford this year, but I know you were busy. And this is the concluding remarks. I think this is like the best group we've ever had. It was a very productive 2 weeks. So a great group.
Well, thank you, Charles. First of all, I'm really very sorry that I interrupted some interesting presentation, which I heard over the last few phrases. So I'm sorry. Second, I was 3 times on Oxford summer seminars, and I really enjoyed all of them. But now here it is the best group that we ever had. I'm really more sorry that I cannot be personally with you. But there was a collision with my family calendar, and when my wife, daughters, and all my grandchildren demand that I'll do something, I have to obey. So, but I'm sure that you learned a lot during the seminar, and I don't want to repeat, I don't know what, but I am sure that you've got already all the basic presentations about anti-Semitism on the right, on the left. Nevertheless, I'll say some of the things of my own you know, practically every day there are coming to me some developments in American and other universities, because I'm in a very close contact with the so-called Israeli fellows who are sent by Israel and who are part of the Hillel groups on the campuses. And just yesterday I got another information from Princeton University that there is one book recommended for reading for students, which is written by one professor from Rutgers University, and she claims in this book that IDF, Israel Defense Forces, deliberately not killing but maiming Palestinians, turning them into the invalids, because that's the way how they control the prevent Palestinian population from growing. When this nonsense was challenged by Hillel, the dean's office answered that that's part of the freedom of speech, and that is the same professor who a few years ago declared that Israel soldiers are harvesting the organs of Palestinians. And again, though it's an absurd statement, but it was repeated thousands of times, millions of times on the internet. And today, I believe that more people on the earth believe in it than those who don't believe in it. And though, of course, there was never one fact which is proving it. But that's typical mechanism of demonization, when demonization is to compare it with something awful and to mention it many times, and then people start believing that probably there was something in it. Just in the last 2 years, on American campuses, there is a deadly encounter statement that Israeli authorities are training American police how to beat or to torture black people in America. But again, it seems it's so ridiculous that who will believe it? But thousands and thousands of times it's repeated on different demonstrations and meetings. And you know, the effect of it reminds me blood libel. Blood libel, which existed of course for 1,000 years, never it was proved. But nevertheless, like in 19th century, one of the longest blood libels trials with dozens of people being kept for many years in prisons, finished with nothing, and people were released. And the Russian Tsar, who was believed to be a very intelligent person, he said, I'm really sorry that it was impossible to prove it, because after all, the history teaches us that there is something, that again and again, it's coming back with Jewish people using the blood of Christians' babies. So again, even the leader of Russia believes that if it was repeated so many times in history, that there is something in this blood libel. I personally remember some of my cellmates in Russia, very intelligent people, fighters against the regime. One of them was telling me, look, of course I understand that you and our friends are not those who are using on Passover table Christian blood. But probably 300 years, 500 years, there was something, because otherwise how it survived this tradition for so many centuries. So it all shows how demonization can work against Jews by used millions of times by anti-Semites, becomes part of the culture. And demonization used against Israel on the same principle, that you are stating something absolutely absurd. But if it is not resisted immediately, if it is not denied immediately as publicly as it is stated, it becomes almost like the matter of fact. And that's why many years ago, when I first had already as a member of Israel government, to confront this fact that there is attacks on Israel, which from my point of view are purely anti-Semitic, and the leaders, political leaders of the Western Europe were telling me, you cannot confuse criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. We are not anti-Semites, but we have the right to criticize Israel. And of course, everybody has the right. Today, practically there is no Israeli citizen who is not criticizing Israel. But So where is when criticism of Israel turns into anti-Semitism? That's when I proposed 20 years ago my 3D principle: demonization, double standard, and the legitimization. These are the tools used against Jews for 1,000 years. Double legislation, or different laws, or different approach to Jews and to non-Jews, and of course demonization and denial of Israel as a legitimate religion, or in only Christianity, or as legitimate nation in Stalin's years. And we all, in Stalin's Soviet Union, read the article of Stalin, Why Jews Are Not a Nation. And when the same principles are applied towards Jewish states, whether it is demonization, whether it is denial or questioning of the right of Israel to exist, or double standard. I had discussion with the leaders of the Human Rights Committee of the United Nations, and I was saying, even if you believe that you are absolutely right in your criticism, but if Israel is condemned for violation of human rights, more than all the dictators in the world together, at the time when China is keeping millions of Uyghurs in concentration camps, when awful things are happening in Sudan, or in Cambodia, or, well, we're not speaking about Iran and Syria, and that Israel is condemned for violation of human rights more than all these countries together, there must be some kind of different criteria for Israel. Well, that's a long discussion, but what I want to say is that it is absolutely necessary to have a clear definition when criticism of Israel turns into anti-Semitism. And that's why international definition of anti-Semitism, our definition, which I'm sure you heard many times during this meeting, is so important and why it is different from the others, because it includes exactly these three principles. It says that demonization of Jew and demonization of the state of Israel are equally anti-Semitic. And President Biden came with great plan, really approaching fight with anti-Semitism from so many directions simultaneously. That's for the first time American administration or any other presents such a plan. But the moment they say that, and we recognize all the different definitions of anti-Semitism, they like give a free hand to all those who are under the pretext of legitimate criticism of Israel, cross all the lines of accusing Israel in all kinds of absurd things, saying that Palestinian refugee camps, that's Auschwitz of today, and quoted simply. And of course I was in Palestinian refugee camps, it's an awful place, and I'm ready to discuss with everybody who has to be blamed that 4 generations of Palestinians live in refugee camps, but what it has to do with Auschwitz. And these type of things, criticism turning into anti-Semitism, is something which has to be challenged on the left and the right. And when I am speaking with representatives of progressive organizations who are fighting against anti-Semitism, but who believe in the power of woke movement, the power of Black Lives Matter, and say, okay, I believe you have to be those who are fighting anti-Semitism on the left, not me. And they're saying, no, only black people can criticize Black Lives Matter, not Jews, and only Jews who proved that they are loyal to their agenda, they can speak behind the closed doors in order not to insult people who are doing such noble things. And I agree, by the way, that they're doing a lot of noble things. But if people on the left will not speak against anti-Semitism on the left, and people on the right will not speak against anti-Semitism on the right, we can never win with this. Otherwise, it's simply political battle between left and right. And the same can say about the university. That every day I get another professor who's speaking, who's in fact demonizing Israel. And I'm saying that it's only professors and only people who are teaching students can really effectively fight and criticize this academic anti-Semitism. And that's why I believe these courses are so important, and this global approach from different directions of anti-Semitism, trying to understand common ground for all these types of hatred, and how we are building our common ground to challenge it's simultaneously. If you are not challenging anti-Semitism in all these forms simultaneously, you can never win in this situation. So that's why these seminars are important, and I do hope that they are helpful. Thank you. Questions.
Thanks, Natan. Yeah. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, David Bernstein is here.
Hi, Natan.
Hi, David.
So I wanted Isabel Tavarowski, who I think is here. Is she still here? She gave a great presentation about how Soviet anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism is really a blueprint for what we're facing today. To what degree do you see ideological echoes in today's political discourse in the U.S. and in the Western world that strikes you similarly or dissimilarly from what happened in the Soviet Union?
Well, first of all, the situation in the Soviet Union was very easy, very clear, because everybody knew that the moment Israel is under attack, Zionism, there is campaign in the press against Zionism, Jews have to be concerned, because it's all about them, even if they don't know this word Zionism, they have never heard about Israel, but if it is anti-Zionist campaign, it means that Jews are the target. And vice versa, of course, that when they were speaking that a double loyalty about Zionist agents among us and so on, it was preparing a new campaign against Israel or destroying diplomatic relations or taking some steps against Israel. So there, for everybody, this connection between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, it was like the same word. So it was really very clear and simple. And also for us it was clear, well those who were fighting against, I was like spokesman two movements, Zionist movement and human rights movement and the Soviet Union. For us it was clear that because dictatorship, for its own stability, needs external enemies and internal enemies to fight, to mobilize people for this struggle. They need anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. There is no easier external enemy, foreign element, unloyal citizens than Jews. And that's why all this de facto discrimination of Jews, which was like a popular issue, everybody understood. And of course, the fact when you're simply attacking America, well, it's another superpower with its own interests. But when you're attacking Israel as an American agent, everybody accepts it. So it was clear for us that that's direct result of the totalitarian regime. That's why it was so surprising for me, 20 years later, with this so-called Durban Conference Against Racism, which was all turned into anti-Israel. It was so strange to see that anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism as if are absolutely independent, and it is so difficult for people to accept that they can be the same. Now, I know you wrote a book about anti-Semitism in the woke movement, which raised some criticism, but you cannot accuse all the woke movement. By the way, I have to say that I agree that you cannot say that woke movement is anti-Semitic by itself. And definitely we can't say about organizations which have such important mission of fighting racism as Black Lives Matter that they're anti-Semitic. But when we're speaking about critical race theories of all times, I tell you, the moment you take the word race and from it and you replace it with the critical class theories, it's simply Leninism, Marxism that we learned and passed exams every year at school, at the university. All your life you have to pass exams about Marxism, Leninism, about class theory. And you are learning that all the world is divided on oppressors and oppressed. And oppressors are always right. Oppressed are always right. Oppressors are always wrong. Oppressors should not be given opportunity to speak, because we have to create dictatorship of proletariat, because only those who are oppressed can bring real truth to the world, and so on and so on and so on. And so again, behind the very noble aims, Soviet Union proclaimed, Marxism proclaimed very noble aims: equality, justice, nobody should be hungry, everybody should have a job. And under the pretext of this, they abolished any free thinking, any criticism, and then they put millions of people in prison for any type of thinking differently. So that is totalitarian regime. So when in free society you will find out that the space of free speech is becoming closer and closer, that politically correctness means censorship, that in the universities people are scared for, I was more than in 100 universities, I heard it hundreds of times from Jewish and non-Jewish students, that they prefer not to speak publicly their mind because their professors will not like it and it will influence on their career, they'll be ostracized by their own fellows, that they will be cancelled in different WhatsApp groups, if only they will tell what they really think. And that phenomena, which is happening not in Moscow, under Brezhnev, or even today, unfortunately, under Putin, which is bringing back the same regime. It's happening in Harvard School, when the student of postdoctorate of business Harvard School tells me that she wanted very much to sign this petition, but she knows for sure that her professors will not like it and it can damage her career, and she decided not to do it. And my God, not in Moscow of the 70s, but in Harvard School of the 21st century. So that's, for me, it's very alarming, because if America will give up on free speech, but there is pretext, then we are all doomed. I can say that in Soviet Union we were fighting, or not we were fighting because of idealism, but we were so strong against KGB because we knew that free world is on our side, and that freedom of thought and speech is something sacred for the free world. It will not be sacred for the United States of America. We are really finished. And that, yes, I am concerned.
Thank you, Natan. We still have about 5 more minutes. Does anybody else have a comment or question for Natan? Marilyn?
Hello, thank you for being with us. We just had a wonderful presentation from another participant here at ISGAP, Aaron Fruh, who told us about what's happening in the United States with Christian nationalism. It seems that the same people that he's talking about who are breeding anti-Semitism as Christian nationalists are also welcome in the Israeli state by the Israeli government, so as Christian evangelicals. So this seems like a very self-destructive position on the part of Israel. Can you comment, please?
Well, first of all, at this moment I'm not in Israeli government, but yes, I had many debates in Israeli government, not specifically about evangelical Christians in America, but for example about right-wing political forces in Hungary. And there was, many times was brought the argument, these are internal political issues of that or other country. And in terms of international relations, in terms of support of the right of our state to exist and resist to our enemies, we have to look for our friends everywhere. And what I was saying, and I'm saying today, anti-Semitism is a big danger for the world, but first of all for Jewish people. And yes, I want people who are fighting for human rights to fight anti-Semitism on the left, to fight anti-Semitism in the human rights organization. And I want people on the right, and of course the Israeli government, to fight anti-Semitism on the right. When there was this famous case in Shaperville, and when the demonstrators were shouting, Jews will not replace us. And President Trump really was not ready to criticize them. And then he said, well, there are good people on both sides and so on. I believed that Israel has to be the first to react angrily. And when 2 days passed and they called the Prime Minister's office, and I said, how it can be that, I was the head of Jewish agency, that Israel government doesn't react on these anti-Semitic events? They said that I'm going to publicly criticize Israeli government. They said, wait another 24 hours, and then they published some statement which was condemning this anti-Semitism, but was not ready to condemn President Trump for his remarks because, yes, let's say the truth, President Trump did some great things, like moving embassy to Jerusalem, what every president promised but only he did, and some other things. But I believe that whatever our interests as a LA or international interests are, we have to be very clear in our position against anti-Semites. Yes, I have to say evangelic Christians are doing a lot to help to strengthen Israel vis-a-vis our enemies. But each time, whenever there is any sign, by the way, many of them are fighting against anti-Semitism, but yes, among them there are people who are ideologically anti-Semites, and I expect from people on the right and from Israeli government to fight them, not to wait when, I don't know, Amnesty International or Black Lives Matter will condemn them, because then it's simply political. And when the left is criticizing the left and right, and the right is criticizing left, it's only good for the elections. It has no result in terms of defeating the enemy. So I do agree that Israel, even when we are speaking about people who are very supportive of Israel, the moment they're shown any kind of anti-Semitism, we should not be hesitant and call spade a spade immediately.
Okay, thank you. So final comment or question? No? Okay. Anybody else?
The problem seminar was so good that everything is clear.
Okay. We've heard all. So final comment from Carolyn.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I hear a lot that people say that if Israel would just treat itself, Palestinians, and other policies in the country, anti-Semitism around the world will drop down, or it will help cope. It will help change the situation with anti-Semitism in the world. And I wanted to know what you think about it. So, do you think the situation in Israel currently, I don't know, participates or contributes to anti-Semitism around the world?
Well, anti-Semitism is much, much older than the state of Israel. I would say even anti-Semitism is more old than the first state of Israel, in the times of King David, because we have examples of anti-Semitism in ancient Egypt. So the highest moments of anti-Semitism were in the pogroms in Russia, and of course in the policy of Nazi Germany, which of course had nothing to do with Israel and even with Zionism. So that's why to say that anti-Semitism is prospering because of Israel, it's simply not true. On the other hand, to say that nothing is influencing. BDS was invented by people who want that Israel will not exist. And Bardugo and some of the leaders of Hamas were those who brought this idea of BDS. But no doubt that it was supported by many people of the far left and at the time less far left, for whom that was the way how Israeli policy towards Palestinians was presented. It was a good reason to support the BDS movement, which started as a movement, the aim of which is to destroy the state of Israel. Now, I was 9 years in prison, but I was also 9 years in Israeli government. And I believe that the peace process, or what is called peace process, was a wrong one, simply because it was built on the idea that if you find the appropriate dictator, in this case Yasser Arafat, and will say Palestinians whether you want it or not, but he will be your leader because he delivers us peace, was absolutely wrong. I was protesting against it from the very first day. I believe that it will make the Palestinians Palestinians only suffer from their own dictator, and we will suffer from the terrorism which this dictator will bring. At the same time, I think that even though this policy, supported by American presidents and many other leaders, that let's have peace with the dictators, is absolutely wrong, but many other things can be done, and from this point, Abraham Accords was a very good sign because it starts from building peace from and Palestinian independence from bottom up and not imposed from the top. So, if Israel is has to be blamed for what's happening with Palestinians, no. Can Israel do better in dealing with many human rights issues? Of course, there is always place for improvement. Is there any other democracy which in that station dealt better? I don't know. I don't think so. I dealt a lot with my friends in America, and I know how America dealt with these issues when it came to Guantanamo base or some other things. I will not go now into details. So, unfortunately, the situation in Israel of permanent fighting for its right to exist has no parallel. There is no books from which we can learn. Israel does a lot to succeed fighting the war and state democracy, but it does enough, it's never enough. And are there ways for improvement? Yes. But to say that antisemitism exists in the world because of this, that's simply to ignore the history of antisemitism.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Natan, so as promised, we're going to end here, and thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
You can bring everything what you learned back to your universities.
Yeah. Thank you very much for taking the time. Okay, cool. So thank you. So Aaron, you want to come back and have 14 more minutes of right-wing fun? That was very powerful.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Very important.
Hope you find your spot.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to fast forward.
Yep.
Aaron, is it good? If it's possible to go like for 5 more minutes and have
Yes.
Q&A, because there was
I
a
just
lot
got
of
5 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Because there was a lot of buzz.
I'm just going to show you guys one more thing, and then all this will be on WhatsApp, so it'll help you. There's references and articles and
including the videos?
Videos are all embedded into the presentation. Almost there. Just a little about deicide. The question is, Nostra Aetate, back in Vatican II, wiped out the issue of deicide. The Catholic Church said, we no longer are going to teach or proclaim that the Jews killed Jesus. So that lie has been in existence for probably 1800 years. And so it comes from the idea that the Jews were responsible for killing Jesus. But in actuality, who killed Jesus? It was the Italians. The Romans killed Jesus. And the Jewish leaders did not have the ability to perform capital punishment. That was all in the hands of Rome. So Jesus was crucified on a Roman cross. The nails were driven in his hands by Roman soldiers, and the governor Pilate was the one that that passed down sentence. And you can go to the Times of Israel, April 5th, 2023, and there's an article I wrote entitled, "If the Romans Killed Jesus, Should We Blame Italians?" And that will sort of explain the history of deicide. And there's another article in Israel 365 News I wrote April 13th, 2022. "This Good Friday, may the false claim the Jews killed Jesus be canceled." And so you can just, if you take the time, it'll sort of explain where the bad theology of deicide came from. Okay. Let's see. Psychological manipulation, that's what's happening in the Christian right today, is a psychological manipulation. And I agree with what Diane said yesterday. There are many, many Christians that are like Tom and Diane. They love Jewish people. They're not anti-Semitic. But then there's many other Christians, I would say the majority of Christians, they will love the state of Israel. They don't like Jews. And so that's where my Jewish friends, it's complex to them. Where is the disconnect? And so the Christian right, the ones I'm talking here about, the Christian nationalists, they will wave the Israeli flag. They love the state of Israel. Why? Because it's an eschatological. Eschatology is talking about end times. So the eschatological view that the pre-tribulation rapture of the church was established by a guy named John Darby in the late 1800s. He came to America, he taught it to American theologians, and the idea was that Christians are not going to go through the tribulation period because God would never allow Gentile Christians to suffer, right? So there's going to be a pre-tribulation rapture of Christians. So his opponent said, John, it's bad theology because there's people living in Jerusalem during the Great Tribulation. Who are those people? And he said, well, it can't be Gentile Christians, has to be Jews. But then they said, there's no state of Israel, and there's not a majority population of Jews living there. So John Darby said, aha, he started Christian Zionism. It was started by John Darby. That's the smoking gun behind Christian Zionism. Is what drives it is eschatology. So let's help get the Jews to Israel, establish the state, proves that we're getting an early departure out of wrath and trouble, and the Jews will go through the Great Tribulation. So that's how a Christian nationalist can love the state of Israel, but not like Jews. So that's what's growing in America today. And the number of indifference in Nazi-occupied Europe, how many Christians actually became the righteous of the nations and protected Jews? 0.1% of the population of Europe at that time, which was 300 million people. So 30,000 people are recorded by Yad Vashem as righteous of the nations. 0.1%. So I would say today in America, it's probably close to the same number of people, that Christian people that really love Jews, very small. The number of indifference is probably around the same. Okay, so psychological manipulation, evangelization and recruitment into a battle of good against evil appeals to an individual's need to belong. And this comes from the recent book, The Psychology Behind Christian Nationalism. It was on the previous side, God, Guns, and Trump. So there's this good and evil appeal that Christians are against the evil people, particularly Jews, that want to bring globalization and replace, Christians with others coming in from outside of America. Fear of loss, the others are going to come in, the immigrant, the stranger, they're going to take our jobs. So that's the psychological manipulation that's happening in these Christian nationalist events. The irrational allure of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories such as QAnon. And QAnon now is growing in the UK. And QAnon, if you haven't studied it, Q is a letter for high security clearance. Anon means anonymous. It started in 2016, 2017. It's a conspiracy theory basically saying that liberals, particularly Jews, are going to take over America. Jeffrey Epstein's blood, and this all gets really tainted, but it's what they believe, that the vaccine was taken in part by Jeffrey Epstein's blood, and a new race of people are going to be established through the vaccine. The blood of our children is on your hands. Have you read about this? It's called adrenochrome. How many have heard about that? Adrenochrome. You'll see this at the Christian nationalist events. You'll see it all over in QAnon rallies. So what it says is that Hollywood elites today, Jews, are sex trafficking children. It's a blood libel, to drain their blood and turn that blood into a powdered chemical to inject into the elite Jews to help them live longer.
That I heard, but I didn't know the name.
Yeah, it's adrenochrome. That's the drug.
Yeah, just to back up what you're saying, me and James went to Florida last week to shoot something, and someone that we were working with brought this up to us and asked me as a Jew what I thought of it.
Okay, so this is my last point, and I'm done. Jim Caviezel, who played the Christ in The Passion of the Christ, Jim Caviezel is QAnon, and the new movie that's out, The Sound of Freedom, which is about sex trafficking, has beat out Tom Cruise's new movie, Mission Impossible. Already they've received $100 million for that movie. And it's the Christian right that's going to this, because the whole idea of adrenochrome, and Jim is pushing the idea that these children are being sex trafficked so that their blood can be drained to give to liberal Jews. And so the motto of QAnon is "The storm is upon us." And "the storm is upon us" is a QAnon motto, and the belief is that Trump is going to come back into office. And again, it all sounds crazy, but this is what is believed. It's psychological manipulation. Trump will come back into office, and there's going to be a day when the storm happens, when all the liberal elites will be arrested and put to death. And so this is Jim a few months ago at a QAnon rally, and I'll end with this.
You can take our lives. You can never take our freedom. Every man dies. Not every man truly lives. You. We must fight for that authentic freedom and live, my friends. By God we must live, and with the Holy Spirit as your shield and Christ as your sword, may you join Saint Michael and all the angels in defending God and sending Lucifer and his henchmen straight right back to hell where they belong.
Watch this now, watch this. Remember what the storm means.
We are headed into the storm.
There it is.
Of all storms. Yes. The storm is upon us.
Wow.
But not without Jesus, our rudder.
Okay. At these events,
Is he the real QAnon?
pardon?
Is he Q?
I don't think so. I don't know. At the events,
No, they traced it back to specific.
yeah, at these events, people are baptized in water, and what they're being baptized into is a whole new form of Christianity. Bandwagon effect. The myth that America was built by Christians. So what can be done to change the narrative? The Jew is the alarm clock of the world. And I think that's why people just despise Jews, because they remind us of our humanity and they remind us of God's morality. So what can be done is education, and what we're doing here at ISGAP. And I'm done. Okay.
Very powerful, and thank you, and very important, and underestimated in much of our analysis, even at ISGAP. So important. Thank you. So we're over time, but we'll do 10 minutes. Okay, Carl.
Just a quick question. No, not so much a question as a statement, I guess, and then sounding like it might convert into a question. I think we've talked in the past, and I don't know whether anyone talked this year about decoding anti-Semitism or decoding rhetoric, but the storm piece is an interesting place, I think, for us to start. The storm, it is clearly part of a theme of anti-Semitism and racism, and the word storm is particularly used by white supremacists in the United States, and so I think that I'm with you on the conversation, the conceptualization. But I think one thing that I would add, and I ask you to comment on this, is that in a lot of literature that I read and write, we don't just talk about Christian nationalism, but we talk about white Christian nationalism.
Right.
Right? Because there's an explicit racism embedded in that.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that there aren't isolated black and brown folks associated with it.
Right.
But the overall swath is very, very different from folks who are, and I'm not even talking about black liberation theology, I'm talking about just folks elsewhere in the North or other parts of the U.S. So I think I would just ask you to investigate or decode that whole idea that a lot of times folks will say white Christian nationalism or white Christian nationalism.
So if you look at the statistics in the presentation from the Brookings Institute, the majority of people involved in the ideology of Christian nationalism are white. And you can, cipher through, there are Hispanics, Asians, African Americans, small percentage, but the majority, I think it was 68% of white evangelicals, which the numbers are about 50 million Americans are white evangelicals. So 68% of white evangelicals adhere to the nationalistic ideology.
Yeah, and that's why one of the phrases that I've used in literature is Dix evangelicals.
Okay.
To differentiate them from the other evangelicals.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions. Very quickly. Yeah. So this is very extreme pronouncements of deicide.
Right.
And yet, in some of the material, deicide is also a very, I don't know, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's quite a mainstream belief in Christianity. So this is an extreme version of it. And yet, even people who are anti-racist, anti-Semitic, they want to have a multicultural democratic society. It's in the mix.
It's in the mix.
And when societies go through economic crisis or problems, how do you see this figuring into it? Is it dormant in most churches? Is it around? Like, how does it express?
No, it's like you said yesterday. It's rooted in the Christian imagination. And because it's in the article I wrote for the Times of Israel a few months ago, I took my walk. I went to a Jesuit Catholic church on my run. I go in there sometimes just to rest. I'm sitting in there. I don't know. I'm sitting there and I look up. I'd never seen it before, just the way the sun was coming in, and they have the 14 stations of the cross right under all the windows. I take a quick look. It's not the Romans. There's Roman soldiers standing back a little with the red uniforms, but it's Jews, long noses with hammers, beating Jesus. And it's in all the 14 stations. And I thought to myself, Nostra Aetate, back in the 60s, was supposedly removed that from Catholicism, but the statues are still there teaching this. So I don't know what the percentage is, Charles, but I can tell you in my experience, like whenever I would, preach about Israel, the Jewish people, invariably someone would come up and say, but what about the fact that they killed Jesus? It's ingrained that the curse, like that pastor in the video, they said, let his blood be upon us. So what they're saying is, so upon that small group of people who were the Judeans, not the Jews that were in Jerusalem at that time, it's a mistranslation. Judeans were elite political Jews in Jerusalem at that time that were politically aligned with Rome. The Galileans were always against the Judeans. It was an in-house fight, like what's happening in Israel today. And so that small elite group of people, they were there and said, "Let his blood be upon us." So what we're saying is, so a handful of people said that. So what that translates to every generation of Jews for 2,000 years that they're under this curse. So that's the huge default of the issue of deicide.
It reminds me of when I was active in the anti-apartheid movement. I was surprised to learn that the black Africans, the Africans, would prefer to sit with the Dutch, the Boers, right? These were the more extreme part of the white community. There'd be the British were more liberal, and the people of Dutch descendants were more conservative and they would be more overt in their support of the apartheid system. But the Africans would rather sit with the Boer, who was more overtly racist, because they knew where they stood. They'd rather engage them, negotiate with them, and speak to them because they were honest and direct. The British white liberals, they would speak up both sides of their mouths, but they would support the apartheid system. So they'd rather sit with the Boer. It's interesting.
Right.
Naomi.
So, just a quick comment and then a question. So if you think about Nostra Aetate, right, in 1965, you have, right, this move in the church to recognize it, but as you point out, right, the images in all the churches, right, you're not
Still there, right.
all the churches, but also, and I don't know as much about like this particular group of white evangelical nationalist Christians as you do, but part of that, as I understand, is also fundamentalism. So it really doesn't matter if anything is a mistranslation of the Bible, right? Because it's a fundamentalist view of your the translation of the Bible that has been passed down to you, which could be, which can interpret these words any way they want. So I think, right, that message of the Jews is like is embedded in the text, even
right.
if it's a historical misunderstanding. But the other question I wanted to ask is, I'm not sure what role exactly, if there are Catholics involved as well, it seemed to be in this white evangelical, this white nationalist movement, but is there any significance to January 6th as the Epiphany, or is that just only a Catholic concept? Because I would just, right, the day of this insurrection.
Right.
Is there any relevance there?
Oh yeah, so I would say that the people that marched on the Capitol were definitely QAnon and Christian nationalists,
Right,
for certain.
What was their understanding of January 6th, like in the Catholic Church, right? That's the feast of the Epiphany.
Oh, I
Is
see
that
what you're
be
saying.
on their radar? King's Day. King's Day in New Orleans started.
I don't know. I haven't found that in any articles I've read about it.
Well, it's just based on the Constitution, I think, ultimately.
Yeah, that was the day. That was the day that. Yeah.
The Constitution happens
That.
to be on the day of the
Okay,
ratification.
Shireen. Okay, so we have like 3 more minutes, Serene, and then.
Is there any pushback from
Excuse me, sorry. Hold on. Could you repeat your question? I don't think that we do.
So what kind of pushback is there from within the Christian community? Is there any pushback?
Against Christian nationalism?
Yeah.
Right now, all the books that I've ordered, from Amazon on this whole issue, are written by Harvard scholars, Yale scholars that are writing about the dangers of Christian nationalism. Editor of Christianity Today just wrote a book, had a couple chapters on it. The Baptists, not the Southern Baptists, but one of the Baptist movements is pushing back. They're the only ones, and it's a small minority Baptist movement. They're writing articles and pushing back against it. That's the only thing I'm seeing on the radar. The publisher of Charisma Magazine just voted one of the top 20 evangelical leaders in America, Steve Strang, is funding Reawaken America. And he is a keynote speaker. So he's totally gone over to the Christian nationalist side. That's the danger when you have Christian publishers, megachurch pastors, gatekeepers that are, completely. So the church has gone very, very political in America.
But there's significant respect from William Barber and the progressive Baptists in the North.
Right. Yeah, that's probably the Baptist movement. Yeah. So the progressive Baptists are pushing back. The conservative, the conservative Southern Baptist pastor's not going to say anything because that's his audience, right?
if I can, what I would like to do is collect 3 questions.
Okay.
Can you be brief with your question, if possible?
So Aaron and I have, yes, I'll be as
Thank you,
brief as
thank
I can. Aaron and I have talked about this. What I wanted to say.
Oh, by the way, a woman of courage. Reawaken America was going to Rochester, New York. I read about it. When was it? 2 or 3 months ago?
No, it was last year.
Last year. I read about it. It was in the news. The Jewish Federation closed them down.
Well,
And she was in the...
Not single-handedly.
Not,
This is
I would like to say you single-handedly did it. But
not at all.
okay, you're in a group.
No, and this is the point I wanted to make, is that things like this, that pop up locally, give us an opportunity to form these coalitions, because it was initially a Jewish woman who started a petition to get it shut down where it was supposed to be staged, which was at the Rochester Armory. And she found that in gaining traction with her petition, she also was getting faith-based leadership on board. And so what this created was a local group that was basically interfaith, where we could pool our resources and fight this. And we did get Reawaken shut down in Rochester. Unfortunately, it just moved to a nearby town like 40 minutes away, and probably, who knows what the effect of that was. But what I wanted to say was, I don't think this is necessarily a threat that we sit back and watch happen to the United States. It's religious nationalism. It's not just Christian, right? And I think if we're going to bring people into these coalitions, we have to be very thoughtful about the language that we use as well, because even saying Christian nationalists can really push some buttons. People who identify as good Christians, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So our group took to say religious
Okay.
nationalism,
Yeah.
and then we had like speakers come like
Yeah.
Catherine Stewart,
I was just thinking the same
Yeah.
who wrote
Not all of us are
the
bad.
power worshippers. The other thing was that to get the folks in Charlottesville, I'm sorry, but I've forgotten the group's name, like off the top of my head. Sorry? Proud Boys? The people who took down the Proud Boys, and the people who are trying to break up groups of Christian nationalists are really going after their bank accounts. So we're looking to lawyers like Amy Slatelnik, who heads up America First,
Not anymore.
and she tries to basically dismantle them. And I think that's it.
Okay, hold on. Let's have some decorum. There's a lot of questions. Let Aaron respond.
I'd just like to say thank you for your courage, and what Charles said yesterday, that the canary in the coal mine. If we see these things happening and we don't sound the alarm, and here's 10 out of Franklin Littell's 15 criteria for a potential genocidal movement, we have to sound the alarm. Because when anti-Semitism is allowed to go unchecked in a nation, the whole of modern civilization, not just the Jewish people, are in jeopardy, but the whole of modern civilization is destroyed. That's why, it's so important to push back. I had a Jewish friend that he read all my articles, and I do radio about all this kind of stuff. He says, man, you got to poke the bear. You're just being too milquetoast. So I started poking the bear, and about 6 months later, he called me back. He says, okay, now you're just poking a little too hard. So you need an insurance policy, because you're going to get sued. So I took out a $2 million Lloyd's of London insurance policy, because we have to poke the bear.
So what I would like to do, James, Jalal, Catherine, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm giving you 20 seconds each to make a comment or ask a question, and then we'll collect them,
All
and then Aaron will have the final
Quick
word.
comment. The argument about the Jews and the money trail and all of that, it looks like somebody needs to follow the money trail on the Christian nationalists. As far as the African Americans' perspective on Christian, I'm glad she brought that up, because you hear the word Christian, you used it. You didn't say Christian nationalists in your presentation. We knew what it was, but a lot of people in the African American congregational or religious section, they hear that word Christian and they say, "Oh, I'm a Christian." But much of that rhetoric is being directed and targeted to the Christian nationalist people.
Right. Thank you. Thanks. Jamal?
More or less joins what so I'm counting. Seconds. We identified that the Muslim Brotherhood is behind a lot of activities to destroy Israel, the financiers and the sponsors as well, to name Qatar. Now, because for me, I'm new to this. I want to if it's possible to explain, because I'm sure that we have Christians here, and I think that they were feeling a bit bad because of what they were hearing. To define what is Christian nationalism, and how many are we talking about? How many millions, and so just to understand.
Okay, thank you. Catherine, final comment or question?
I mean, thank you for confirming all our prejudices about American Christianity in one presentation.
Sorry.
I'm concerned though, as an Anglican, this notion that like deicide is embedded, not from a personal reason, but the only time I've heard anti-Semitism from the pulpit, the only time I've heard deicide anti-Semitism from the pulpit was from a Southern Baptist preacher when I was at school.
Wow.
It isn't our tradition for at least 70 years, which is as far as we can go back in our own family, have always been taught in church that this is not true. Now that may be an anti-Catholic thing, rather than a pro-Jewish thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to answer these questions, I use the word Christian because the philosopher, I always mispronounce it, Pascal, men never do evil so much as when they do it from a religious perspective. And so if we don't talk about what Christianity has been responsible for, we create a Christianity that's above history. And I don't want to do that. I mean, you think of the Crusades, the Inquisition, the Holocaust, apartheid, all led by Christian leaders, right? So it's a conversation that needs to happen within evangelical Christianity, because people say, well, I'm a Christian, I would never do that. But historically, we got issues, right?
But what's going on is biblical. It's biblical.
On that note, so Aaron, thank you so much for a powerful presentation.